Yeah, I guess without further ado, I'll turn it over to a triple threat of speakers from the Extension team and take it away.
Hi, everyone. My name is Anni Poetzl. I'm the Water Quality Extension Educator, but also the liaison between UNL and the Department of Water, Energy, and Environment. Today, we are so happy that you could join us and learn more about Extension, each one of our roles, my colleagues Crystal Powers and Becky Schuerman. And because we kind of have a lot to cover, I'm just going to hand it off to Crystal, who will lead us off. So, thanks.
Boy, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us. Let me get myself attached. I may talk with my hands, so this gives me a little bit more. So what we kind of wanted to talk about was, then is it going to move? It moved on there. All right. So I wanted to kick us off with a little bit. We talked about, should we cover more theory or nuts and bolts? And we're going to do nuts and bolts just as a preview. But this is my one theory slide about how do we take what we learn in our science and go into something that's useful for people. So this is what we do in Extension. Some of this you do in science as well, but you start with your raw data and then we move it further along the process and translate it along the way so that it's something useful for our partners. So this is my favorite slide on what that looks like. So this is kind of the extent of maybe the theory side of it, but we're going to spend more time is like, how do we do it? And so I assumed there were probably people in the room who don't know Nebraska Extension. So I just want to start at super high level. We're a land grant institution that's research, teaching, and extension. So within Extension, what we're really trying to do is come alongside Nebraskans and co-create. So we're bringing the science, but we're also really involving that partner to think about how does it help them in whatever part of their life that we're working with. And so we have three big blocks within that. We've got strengthening Nebraska agriculture and food systems. So I'm going to talk more about that one. We've got inspiring Nebraskans and their communities. So that can be everything from rural development to daycare and those sort of situations. And then we've got how do we enhance the well-being of Nebraskans. So functionally across the state, we've got a lot of research and extension facilities. We've got footprint in 83 counties with offices, and our goal is to reach all 93 counties in Nebraska. So we do that through, I'm going to have to click both. Our online folks have a different screen. It seems up here, it looks like maybe. Are you seeing this? Okay, so maybe we can get by with one. So there's 8 within Extension. We've broken it into 8 different topic areas, and that's primarily driven by who is the client. That's what the language, at least some of us use in that space. Who are we working with for Nebraskans? And so that can be youth folks in 4-H and youth. We've got ranchers. We've got residential where we work with horticulture landscaping. Becky is going to go a little deeper into that team. There's profitability side of it, which is mostly our ag econ colleagues. The general public for this health and well-being space. We've got early childhood, which tends to be a lot of focus on daycares, rural community development, and then water and cropping systems primarily works with farmers and their advisors. So that's the one I'm going to dive into just a little bit more. Oops. Okay. So kind of where we've focused in on in water and cropping systems is that strengthening Nebraska's agriculture. And we're doing that through 2 primary ways. We're growing more with less, and that implies less inputs and less impact on our natural resources. So we think about productivity and profitability on the growing side, and then water, soils, biodiversity, all those pieces that are the foundation of what makes Nebraska. And so just kind of wanted to share people-wise, what are we talking about on this team? Eric Hunt's in the room. He's one of our statewide educators. Myself and Anni are part of this, officially part of this team in this statewide role and based here in SNR. So we're kind of your connection point there. And then we've got Andy Little and several of our conservation and survey colleagues also have a portion of theirs. So those are the folks you see on here for the School of Natural Resources. But then we've got folks from agronomy and horticulture, biological systems engineering, entomology, and plant pathology. So we're really trying to kind of have this holistic view of farming practices on the cropping side. And just spatially, to kind of think about our county-based colleagues, they each have geographic regions. So while those of us on campus tend to be more topical experts, our county-based folks are kind of tasked with being experts of their region. And so this is, you can't see everybody's names on here, but this is kind of how everybody is geographically split across the state. And then internally, we really think of it as a network of water. I use water science because I come out of the water center and I mostly work in water, but this is true across the different disciplines. And so these are all faculty, like I made this map out of, there's 220 some, I think it's 223 circles on this. These are water connected faculty just in Nebraska. And then if you think about those, all of you connect to the global science network. And so in this particular view, I put extension at the center because, you know, being this talk. And so it's how do we bring that together and then bring it out through our external networks. And so the language we're using right now in extension is the nexus of agriculture. So it's how do we bring together conservation partners, farmer partners, and our ag industry partners. So you can imagine there's many viewpoints and diverse ways to bring them together. So how do we really think about engaging this really large segment of Nebraska? And so the one that I use, so I'm putting on I'm also the program leader for this team. I should have maybe done a little bit, you can see it in the program. But I'm one of the program leaders. There's currently two of us. It's a 3-person team that are program leaders. So I'm kind of putting on that hat of how do we think about this as a team of, and we use the partners IP3 spectrum, and I'm going to forget what the acronym is, but it's this public participation spectrum. And so there's basics of just informing someone all the way to like empowering them to go out and do it. And what that looks like as a group, we try to cover this whole spectrum. And so if we start at the top, this is how you individually work with people to implement decisions in their farming operation or as an ag advisor. So this is things like our on-farm research programs where we work one-on-one with farmers to do experiments in their own field. It's our TAPS competition, which is a way to game it out, and just lots of one-on-one conversations with folks. And so these are very time intensive. You don't reach as many people, but they have a lot of impact. You know, in our on-farm research, we see the practices that they try last an average of 7 to 8 seasons, which in agriculture, that pretty much is a permanent behavior change. And that's on average. So that's even the ones who they try it out, it doesn't work. So we're just showing, in that case, they're really going out and making a change in what they do. And then kind of the next level down is how do we build coalitions and partnerships? Most of what is visible are these lectures and activities and programs that we put on all over the state. But then underlying that are those peer-reviewed publications. And so in extension, those are like for our website, Crop Watch, water website. So those are still peer-reviewed faculty publications that are the underpinning of like what is the knowledge base that we're putting out there, and then all the outreach that happens. And so these are social media accounts, TV appearances, newspaper articles. And so our faculty get involved top to bottom across this portfolio. And so one of the things we're trying to work on is how do we integrate better across these programs? And so we're really thinking of it more as a learning network to make sure that producers can move between these different levels and have discussions about, well, this is what I learned on my farm, connect in a peer group and talk about what they saw, and then build confidence to really move this decision-making process. So this is kind of where we're headed in the next year, is to have intentionality in program integration. And so what this ends up looking like when you put all those people together, last year we reached nearly all of Nebraska's cropping system farmers. And so that's 28,000 crop operations. And so we're seeing that we've had, almost double that in participants. That's saying on average, people attend 2 of our events, because we had over 51,000 participants across almost 1,200 events. This is just the direct, so this is events that people put on. And so this team is extremely productive, and it's hard to kind of wrap our heads around, like, how does this actually all work together? But it is because we have really dedicated people working all across the state. So we kind of try to point ourselves in the same direction, and it's messy as it all works out. So the circles are all the places, those are sized based on where they happen, but this is really kind of looking at, we're really not doing much in the sandhills just because it's livestock. If you looked at the livestock team, it'd be the inverse. But really showing how we're trying to reach the state. And I don't even think this is a complete number, but we do try to track our outreach numbers. And so those aren't all in Nebraska, but just kind of showcasing that whole portfolio and what it ends up looking like. So then switching gears just a bit, part of what we wanted to show is like what we personally do and how you can connect with us. So my background, to do my introduction here in the middle, which seems odd, but I'm an environmental engineer. I did my BS here in BSE and my master's at Cornell before coming back, and had emphasis areas in communication and political science kind of that whole time since I went undergrad. So what that turns into, right now I have this 30% administrative appointment. So if you have team questions, you can reach out to me and like, how can you work with the team? I do a lot of the communications for our team, and then all of us as a leadership team help work on the focus and strategy side. And then the part I'm going to spend a little bit of time on is like how we might work together in water management. So that's still the bulk of what I do, is the statewide role of working with water managers across the state. And I've kind of really honed in on, over the last several years, science communication and trying to organize our efforts around nitrate. So kind of what this looks like. So since I claim portfolio, just wanted to kind of show like what we do in an average year. So last year I had, of those direct contacts, about 2,000 of them were mine at different events, and my outreach, my outreach numbers. But what a lot of this is you spend a lot of time on that individualized one-on-one. I do a lot of partnership work, so I have connections with about 53 organizations across the state. I'll talk a little bit more about that piece, because that's, I think, one of the ways that I can help you get connected. There's activities and events we put on. And so this is just kind of showcasing, like, we can get involved in all these. If there's research work, you want to get into the extension space in writing, we can, glad to help in that space. And then I try to promote, we talk about like when you create one piece of content, it gets multi-purpose. So it goes on TV, are there websites, social media platforms, and getting it out through all those. So the big part of that is this liaison piece. You'll hear more about it with Anni too, because she has that as part of her work. So I'm based at the Nebraska Water Center, which is part of the Daugherty Water for Food Global Institute. So I'm kind of embedded with those folks over there. And then the primary folks that I interact with all the time are NRDs. I go to almost all of their events, our irrigation districts across the state, and NRCS is a key partner in all of that. So those are kind of the primary ones, and there are a lot of other ag advisors who come in. So really trying to be a communicator, to share our stories of our research out there, be an analyst to help understand their culture and their issues and bring that back to campus. And then kind of the best word I can describe is the ambassador piece of like, how do you get the right people talking to make projects happen? So help both on the research side and setting up grants. It can be bringing on partners to, like, we just had a NASA grant we were putting together, so that's bringing NRDs to that project. It can be extension projects. So there's a wide range of ways that we can work together on that. Then if we, like a specific educational piece I do is on science communication. So I've had a long interest in that. And then like at every meeting with our conservation partners, they're like, we get this science, but how do we talk about it? So this course came out of that. It's a really interactive workshop. We can do all of it in one day, or I've split it up in 1,000 different ways. We've got 3 big blocks of that. One is the one-on-one conversation, because that's where almost all of this starts. So this is where we get into the theory and nuts and bolts of how we do engagement. And it starts with those conversations. The middle part is about systems thinking and influencing systems. And then the last one is really about the, like, mostly what people think of the communications, like what are the words you should use and how do we design media campaigns and how do we put together workshops or open houses that are designed for success. So this is maybe the meat of what I could offer back to the group is we could put on sessions for this group. I've done it for our extension colleagues and for sure for our conservation partners over the last couple years. So glad to help advise in that space. And then the last kind of educational piece I want to share was kind of looking at bringing together a systems view on Nebraska nitrate. So this can be everything from, this was a piece I created on the history, like helping all of us remember like this long 100-year pathway we've been on nitrate. It can be helping people understand the network here within campus. And so we've got people in water and conservation, policy, and like how do they even know who to talk to on campus? So helping them understand, outside partners understand our faculty networks, and also trying to bridge this. I mean, like, we often work in our departments, but sometimes it's interdisciplinary work. So trying to find ways to bridge that. And then there's a partnership side. So these are all different partners that were involved in, we did some nitrate working groups. Katie Pekarik, who was here before, and I ran these. And we had, I think, 43 partners in this one. And so we've kind of kept touch with them, built this since then, and then helping us internally kind of understand the policy landscape. So I go to a lot of these policy regulatory meetings, and so can be an advisor as well as connection point to if you need to get involved in some of these policy conversations and how our science plays into local NRD. State, I have a presentation I'm presenting to the the governor's water task force tomorrow. We had agronomy help write guidance documents for the Nitrogen Incentive Act. So it's kind of making sure that the science shows up in these policy discussions. So the last thing I will leave you with, because I've probably already spent my time, is we're really thinking about how can we offer this in coordinated ways so it looks more like what we see on campus with the teaching side in extension. So we're thinking about a water stewardship certification. And this comes out of a project with Master Irrigator. If any of you heard me talk about it, we're kind of broadening it beyond just the irrigated farms to really think about how can they have both experiential learning and these knowledge pieces and combine it for farmers or farm advisors who want to really dig in and show commitment to it, that it becomes a certification, which then hopefully opens up incentives. In other states, they've been able to have this give them priority conservation dollars, or what do I want to call it? not coupons, discounts on ag tech, some of these things. So those conversations are in the work. I think it's going to be able to open some doors and for some incentives for our partners to use. Plus, it's an incentive to really plug into what we're doing in ag extension and conservation extension. So with that, I think we'll do questions at the end, right? Yeah, we're going to talk about like if there's pieces of this you want to know more about at the end when we all go together. So I will hand it off to Becky.
Hello, my name is Becky Schuerman, and I work in the area of domestic wells and on-site wastewater with an extension. And of course, know Mark Burback, I know Jeff and so forth. So I office out of the Lancaster office, the extension office off of West O. And so I take, like I said before, take care of the domestic water and on-site wastewater program. So I'm a little bit different as far as the program area that I work with and am based under, rather than Crystal and Anni. I'm within horticulture, landscape, and environmental systems program area. And so technically, myself, along with urban entomology, we are the environmental systems section of HLES. And so we have more of a residential focus, whereas WICS has more of an agricultural focus. That's not to say that I don't cross over. But I also work with other program areas as well as WICS, do programming with 4-H, as well as early childhood. I also work with BSE, SNR, agronomy, and others. And I am a member of the focus team leadership for HLES. So HLES's goals are to support fruit and vegetable growers. We're trying to improve and manage landscapes, promote environmental resiliency and stewardship, and protect domestic water sources, and with that, protecting human, animal, and structural health. And then we also try to foster the One Health ecosystem. So through extension, we have experts and resources. Nebraskans have what they need to make well-informed decisions as far as their landscapes and their water and their environment. And we really think of Nebraska Extension as an integral partner in helping Nebraska live up to its well-earned reputation of the good life. And so as you can see with this map, much like Crystal's, this is where our HLES folks are stationed across the state. And of course, then in the lower left-hand corner, we've got some of our specialists as well as our statewide people. Now, HLES is also home to our Backyard Farmer Group. And so that show is, and those specialists all come under HLES. So you will see many of the folks on this map being panelists on Backyard Farmer. And so I'm here within my job to help supply fact-based information and education for well drilling and on-site wastewater professionals, owners of private well and on-site wastewater systems, youth programming on groundwater and the impacts we have on our groundwater resources, and then any folks affiliated with NRDs, health departments, realtors, etc. Youth programming, I'm actually collaborating with Troy Gilmore tomorrow, and we are going to be teaching at Norris about groundwater flow and how contaminants move within our groundwater. And that will be with all of the advanced chemistry students tomorrow at Norris. Troy and I have also collaborated in co-writing education and curriculum for the Build-A-Hut program through 4-H at Douglas Sarpy, based up at Douglas Sarpy County, on both water quality and water travel. So we do collaborate. I've also collaborated with folks from BSE, Aaron Middlestedt, in some programming, youth programming for middle school students. over with BSE, where they've gone and learned about wetlands and how wetlands can help clean up our surface water contamination. And then we did an EnviroScape model to show kids how runoff impacts not only our private wells, but also our surface water. So we have different NEB Guide topics within the drinking water publications. For instance, understanding private drinking water wells, groundwater protection, groundwater contaminants, testing, treatment, and conservation. All of these are available online, of course. We no longer do a lot of print copies. And then Bruce Dvorak from environmental engineering and civil engineering, he and I work to try and keep these as updated as humanly possible. So we're working on a batch right now. And then we have our on-site wastewater NEB Guide topics, just saying wastewater, what is it? Septic systems, this includes your septic tanks and your drain fields or your lateral systems. Lagoons, lagoons are not allowed in all parts of the state, but they are in southeast Nebraska. And then there's other systems, which are our alternate systems for environmentally friendly vulnerable areas, environmentally vulnerable areas, not friendly, sorry, which includes your mound systems and constructed wetlands. Then we have water.unl.edu. So all of our NEB guides are found here. Any of our articles and such, I write not only for different newsletters for extension offices, but also small town newspapers. And so all of those can be found here, whether it's under the category of drinking water and water wells, wastewater, stormwater management, and then of course lawn gardens and landscapes. A number of my colleagues also write and post things under that. If you go to water.unl.edu, you can also join the newsletter that we have available that gets sent out every month. And that newsletter will include the articles that we do, that we post each month so that they're all in one place for you. So a lot of what I do other than youth programming and such, and programming for homeowners and realtors and health department folks, is to provide education for professionals. And the professionals are mostly in the water and on-site wastewater industries. I collaborate with the Nebraska Department of Water, Energy, and Environment, otherwise known as DWE, the Nebraska Well Drillers, the Nebraska On-Site Wastewater Association, as well as Nebraska Rural Water Association. My background comes from the regulatory side of the world. So I spent over 17 years working with the regulatory for the state with private wells as well as public drinking water. And so I still have my ties to Nebraska Rural Water, which incorporates, their membership incorporates a lot of the small towns throughout Nebraska. And of course, the water and wastewater operators that take care of those systems, because in smaller towns, your operator is the jack of all trades. They take care of everything. So I also get to work with entities such as UNMC, the NRDs, and as I said earlier, health departments and Realtors Association. Right now, I'm working with UNMC, and Anni is as well, and Crystal's kind of into it, but not on the main committee. We're working on programming for health providers and how they can talk better and with their clients and their patients about nitrate and the health impacts of nitrate. And so that's been a really interesting collaboration these last few months. And we're just approaching the end of our phase 1, which has been a number of surveys and such with healthcare providers as well as NRDs, and moving into phase 2 of that. But always looking to collaborate with different folks in SNR and Kasner colleagues to provide statewide learning opportunities, classroom, hands-on, kind of what we call in the well drilling and on-site fields, kick the dirt kind of things, as well as learning, virtual learning ideas are all welcome. So If anybody is interested in collaborating for the main set of the professionals that I have listed in point 1, please reach out. That'd be awesome. And I guess the last thing I want to leave you with is I think it's always important to take that step, not only to help educate folks, but also learn from others. I'm a firm believer that one should never stop learning. I know that within HLES, we very much try to embody this. We've got, just in the last year, we've had over 20,000 one-on-one connections made with each receiving personalized, trusted expertise, advice, and support. HLES deals a lot with walk-in people, particularly because of horticulture, then bringing in samples and so forth. I deal with some walk-in folks, but we deal a lot with emails for people and sending information back and forth as far as diagnosing issues, as well as identifying whatever specimen that they're looking to identify. And then finally, we've got over 46,000 people directly impacted by 647 program activities within HLES this last year. So we're looking to increase that whenever possible, and looking to, of course, partner with other folks here on campus as much as we can. So I will hand it off to Anni.
Hello, everyone. First time using a lapel, so that's always first of everything. Hello and welcome, I'm back. So I'm going to be talking about Extension's work with agencies and the public. I had mentioned that I'm a liaison with the Department of Water, Energy, and the Environment, as well as the Water Quality Extension Educator throughout the state. So I really want to share kind of what programs I work more closely with at DWEE or DWE. Also want to share the different types of assistance that I've provided since March, really 2025. That's when I started in this position. And as I share kind of these different assistance types, I really just want to use it to kind of spur ideas how maybe you guys can fit into this extensive network that we have shared up here, and kind of talk about maybe, maybe some ways, maybe I can help generate some of those ideas. So I'm going to try. Okay, so at the Department of Water, Energy, and Environment, I work very, very closely with the non-point source pollution team. DWE has many different programs, whether it be waste, air, permitting, compliance, even energy programs, all these different people within this agency. And I work closely with the non-point source team, but I also can at least connect you to people within the agency. Just as Extension is nice and extensive, so is DWE. Within this 319 non-point source pollution program, really we have two main awards that you could apply for. The first one being small project awards. These are meant mostly for like activities, education, installation of maybe a best management practice. This example, the Jocelyn Art Museum on the left-hand side, is the installation of one of 4 rain gardens that they had installed in 2012. But we also have a watershed-based project award, and those are definitely more extensive. So an example of this is at Shoemaker Marsh on the right-hand side. Basically, a project was implemented to reduce sediment loads going into Shoemaker Marsh, which is kind of prime habitat for Salt Creek tiger beetle. So they did some amazing work there and was able to keep that habitat intact so that they could release some beetles. So kind of jumping into the different assistance that I've provided since March in this role, what I'll do is I'll kind of list the activities and then show the different projects that are related to that. I won't go into any particular project in depth per se, but just kind of mentioned my general role within it. So first of all, I will say in the center, I equate being a liaison, of course, with connection. So that kind of guides a lot of the activities and works that I do. So my first assistance type is really planning and coordinating educational events. From the two examples above, really what I hope to do was identify and connect the different teams to external partners that could enrich the discussion, add technical assistance, provide additional resources and ways of seeing the situation. Then I definitely assist in the 319 application process as prospective project proponents. As they apply to these awards, they may need help navigating the application process. They also may need help with kind of just general guidance on what should be created for the application materials. So I help in those ways, and also kind of just opening the communication with my 319 team. They're great. They are small but mighty, a group of 4. So wherever I can help, we like to help each other, and we do. Next, creating educational materials and implement educational activities. These are some examples more so of educational materials, but I also like to get involved in, of course, educational activities that really have public interaction, public engagement. That could be kind of at Husker Harvest Days, which is like a 4-day event that happens yearly, mostly with producers, but also with students in the FFA group. Yeah. So that was a really impactful event that I was happy to be a part of. But also within these educational materials, just being able to, again, kind of leverage my own knowledge, trying to help taking scientific jargon and kind of make it more public friendly, and connecting them with the different resources that I have access to at DWE or at UNL, and the partners that I work with writ large. I also amplify, just in general, current research goings on, or the different research-based solutions that are being produced in the university system. Really, wherever I go, whatever conversation I'm in, I always remember, what people have told me, what they're excited about, what they've discovered in their own research, or what they're passionate about and want to get out and relay to more people. So this role, I'm able to definitely reach out in that way and amplify it. I also help strengthen water quality efforts to accomplish, the different teams' goals. One really good example that I have is what we, I guess, kind of colloquially called the Highway Project, but it is basically in-season nitrogen application and cover crop interseeding. This is a project that started way before me, and my predecessor actually, I believe, was the one who started it, but kind of continuing on that legacy and adding to it, of course, where we're at a point where if we get the funding renewed, we'd like to start looking at the economic viability of this resource and trying to see how and under what situations it might be useful to producers or to co-ops. And then lastly, fostering the development of action-based teams to tackle statewide water quality concerns. So I'm really proud of this little point right here, just because I feel like it kind of got started with myself and other partners, and not just carrying on a legacy, but kind of trying to start one with others. And there's a growing wetlands partnership with Nebraska Game and Parks Commission, with Rainwater Basin Joint Venture, with Ducks Unlimited, and more. This is a growing partnership where we are trying to basically advocate for wetlands as a best management practice, or BMP, for non-point source pollution. So a lot of the partnerships that occur, kind of like any relationship, usually organically, right? And I think what's really cool is I get to work with partners. We get to work together on projects, activities, or initiatives, and really get informed by institutional knowledge, local knowledge, so that we can nurture long-lasting solutions that aren't just implemented but actively used, serve a purpose, and people are invested and are part of the process. And plug, you can be an active partner. And some of you guys are active partners. And I know that our team is heavily like water-based mostly. But as Crystal had mentioned, there's so many people in this extension network. So if you don't necessarily feel like water is kind of where you could plug into, there's other arenas that we could help get you a part of, because the research and the work that you do is really important. So that being said, I wanted to think of some ways, or I tried to brainstorm before this presentation, of how you might get involved with extension. And really just driving home the point that within extension, we have all these layers of relationship building, whether it's like the local county officials, whether it is higher up at the statewide educator domain, so to speak. All those different levels you can plug into. So connecting to the public and the partners that we each have and leveraging those resources. We could also help promote research-based solutions. So just, again, kind of through this network, being able, as people who are on the ground, local, have more ability to form those relationships, we're able to introduce you to these communities and get like your roots planted in these spaces. So we can promote those research-based solutions. Next, connecting to on-farm research. Admittedly, I don't know too much about the process of getting involved in this myself, but I do know it's a great way to apply research and regional scales, so that basically it's a model for producers, or well, for producers who can then see, wow, this was successful, or it had met these different goals, and it was in my own region, which really makes an impact. And then lastly, as Crystal had mentioned, broadening the reach and the impact of your research and expertise. So talking back at that impact portfolio, whether you want to reach many, many people, or you might just want to be involved with a couple people and having more of maybe an impact versus reach. We can help, facilitate that. And with that being said, thank you so much for attending this. I'll invite Becky and Crystal to come up, and if you guys have any questions, please ask away.
Do it, or you guys can do it. Okay, cool.
Gotcha.
Yeah, if there's any questions from anyone, I'll bring this over to you so we can hear it on Zoom.
Could you comment on the health of residential wells? So many people on their own properties, and yet these things can be contaminated with nitrates and uranium and all that kind of stuff. How does the average person know that their well is safe? How do they test for that? And if there's problems, do you folks help with remediation? So maybe you could comment on that, because we all have to drink water.
Indeed, we do. Water is life. Yes, so I do a lot of educative conversation with private homeowners, and I'm working on also building a program for realtors who sell properties so that they can kind of be the first in line to point people in the right direction as far as they are now their own water operator and wastewater operator, moving on to an acreage that has usually both systems. If you're going to have one, you're going to have both. Sorry about that. We work on getting the information out there that people need to be testing annually for the bare minimum of nitrate and total coliform, which also includes E. coli, and testing annually. From there, we also encourage folks to check with their local NRD and or health department nearby town that we know tests their water on a regular basis for well over 90 different contaminants, and to find out if there's any other contaminants of concern in their area, because of the fact that you can't test for everything. I have a number of people who call and say, I want to test for everything. I said, well, you don't have that much money. Unfortunately, just testing for glyphosate alone is over $200, which would be Roundup, of course. So that's how we try to encourage folks to do that through both of our articles and getting the word out through NRDs and health departments and so forth. Just a couple of weeks ago, I was at a health department conference here in Lincoln, and am working now with a number of them to be able to push out the publications that we do have and work with them on educating folks the best we can. It's not an easy task, but we are working toward it. Of course, with private wells, we operate off of the EPA guidelines as far as MCLs go, because there are no private well regulations. So when it comes to those MCLs for contaminants, we are working off of what the public drinking water systems work off of. Now, some people will say that they're not strict enough, but it is what we have for the time being. And of course, through research with UNMC and other folks throughout the university system and so forth, we're finding out more and more, especially about the health impacts of nitrate. So, and as far as testing goes, we recommend certified laboratories, and usually send out information for the state laboratory in Lincoln.
And I just want to say a little bit more about youth programming, because that's also a really good outlet to get to homeowners, because when your kids are talking about it, then the parents tend to pay attention. So we've got one large program is Know Your Well that started at the Water Sciences Lab, which Dan Snow's, here in SNR. And so that worked with FFA and science programs, and I think they're into 50-ish schools now. And have a full curriculum. So they go out and test wells, and then they have to present back to both their chapter, and then they've gone on to NRDs and many others, but it's been really compelling way to reach folks. And then I think all three of us have been involved with, just youth programming and 4-H. And so we do like little well test or water testing events or helping them learn about it. So trying to kind of reach that whole pipeline of folks, I guess you'd say, of all ages, so that it's a lot of conversations, because as she said, it's all voluntary, and so we just have to try to convince folks to keep paying attention.
I'm a PhD student, but also I work with the Nebraska One Health and contaminant or contamination in biological sometimes. Question is, do you have some education material related to One Health focus on high schoolers? If you do have, do you allow organizations or groups working on similar objectives to use your material, or is there a specific community to follow before using your materials? Thank you.
So I've talked a little bit with the One Health team in the past about how we might think about more intentionally working together, but I would say like it's hasn't moved to like tangibles. But for Know Your Well, that curriculum is developed and it's matched all to the Nebraska science standards. So that's all publicly available. And there's another curriculum that I'm forgetting the name, but it's really about water quality and then like policy pieces. It's also a high school curriculum that was developed from the Department of Education, which I can get you the name. And there again, it was developed and it's matched to the science standards and it's now available for teachers. And so it's all publicly available content. And then as far as adding, so when you're working in the formal education space, so maybe like one other context piece, most of what we do in extension, we call informal education because it's outside of a classroom, more structured space. But when you are working with classrooms, we do have some folks who have those connections with the Department of Education to get it into science standards and work with teachers. There have been some EPA grants that have had success in developing that curriculum so that you can hire the teachers to make sure that it's really good. So yes, we know the people. It's maybe not us. This is, like I said, this is a big part of what we do is like there's certain things you saw there that we do, and then we know the people, hopefully, that we can connect you to. Okay. Do you want to say anything more about One Health?
Well, I know some of my colleagues within HLES are very involved with One Health, but it's more entomology focused as well as hort focused. So, I do know that there's a One Health component within 4-H as well. And so that goes everywhere from pretty much a second grade level all the way through high school. And like I said, I'll repeat what Crystal said. We can get you in touch with those folks if you'd like. So, yeah.
Can you briefly touch on how you guys are funded? I heard Anni say, if we get our grant or if we get funding, we'll be able to do this. Do you guys have to write grants regularly? Or are you like a line item from the state or from Nebraska Extension or whatever? I'm just wondering how you do this good work and how it's all paid for.
I'll put on my program leader hat. It's a yes and so extension as a whole has county-based funding, state-based funding, and federal funding, which is base funding for extension. And then we do also participate in grants. So sometimes that's primarily a research grant that they need an educational component. So we come in and provide that part. We do have some that are 100% education grants. So like everyone on campus, we try to have a diverse funding portfolio because it's difficult at all times, and particularly this year. But we'd started this process of having many outlets, and so some of my funding comes from other parts of campus as well. So like since I'm part of the Daugherty Water for Food Institute, some of that's private foundation funding. Like Anni can talk more about, part of her salary is paid through state DWE. And so there's kind of this whole portfolio, and I don't know if you guys want to add to that.
Yeah, I'd say I'm pretty much kind of 50-50, where Nebraska Extension is paying for half and then DWE is paying for the other half of my position. So if I'm not necessarily on campus regularly, it's because I'm trying to kind of split between two places, with the caveat of whenever there's events going on, I will be trying to be out at the event. So it's interesting, but as far as kind of that grant I was alluding to, that is for the Highboy project itself. So that's a 319 award that I was talking a little bit about earlier. This particular project is trying to move into phase 3. So by talking to my 319 team, those federal funds that go to that award program, those are still available. But of course, there is an application process, and we had submitted for it, and we're just waiting to hear back. So.
Yeah, so my funding is also diverse. Some of it comes from my programming, and we're all being tasked with bringing in more programming money so that we can continue our efforts with other programming. So when I do professional development kind of things, professionals it's very common to be paying for professional development hours or continuing education hours toward their licenses and certifications. So, so some of my monies come from that. And then some of the programming that I've been involved with, I mean, the UNMC, there's a lot of grant funding for the program, the nitrate and health provider programming that we're putting together. And then as well as just like the youth programming that I've worked with Douglas Sarpy, but is extended to multiple other counties. Those were Kiewit grants as well as innovation science and such. So it is quite diverse, and we're always looking, for that pot of money under the rainbow. So, or that money tree.
Well, and give the speakers another round of applause.
Thank you, guys.